Patient and public involvement, or PPI, in the context of clinical research, is all about researchers and patients, carers or other members of the public working together to carry out research. This is different to research that's done about members of the public or on their behalf. Here, at the MRC Clinical Trials Unit at UCL, we are committed to actively involving patients and the public in our clinical research. There are many different ways that this is done, from regular involvement in a trial steering committee over a number of years, to one-off focus groups where ideas for new research are discussed. In this short film, we've asked 3 of our current patient representatives, Richard, Dave and Ben, to talk about their experiences of patient and public involvement.
The Medical Research Council Clinical Trials Unit are very keen to have patient involvement right from the very beginning, the trial design stage, through to the end.
The patient is there to ensure that the research remains focused and that it's answering a question that's important and it's answering it for the right group of patients, and to make sure that when the clinicians and the statisticians are talking about issues around the trial, that somebody who's lived through the illness will be able to have an input and to keep that opinion of the patient and care at the forefront of the research.
It's encouraging members of the public and patients to get involved in research, and it's this willingness to listen to our opinions and our views at every stage of the research process. And I would never underestimate that, and the efforts they make to go out to patient groups in things like HIV trials and actually find out what the patients are hoping for their futures and the questions they would like answered. So it's that kind of openness and the willingness to get out into the world that really, really impresses me. If it's possible,
Yeah.
I'd quite like to attend one, but actually with my other hat on. I have 2 roles with the MRC CTU. The first is sitting on their Patient and Public Involvement Steering Group, which is a group of people looking at ways to get patients and the public more involved in designing and delivering medical research. And the other role I have is sitting on the Trial Protocol Review Committee. My role on the Protocol Review Committee is to look at the studies presented at that stage, which is where someone has come up with an idea for a trial and they've put the framework, the design in place, so they have a rough idea of how they're going to make it work, where they're going to run it, how many people they need to recruit, and of course what the question is that they're asking. My role is twofold. It's really to put a lay perspective on that design, and that tends to be some, to me, fairly obvious questions, such as could it be run in more places? Do you have the resources to do that? Will you actually recruit the number of people that you're looking for, especially if it's a high proportion of the patient population that's involved? But also the thing that I personally enjoy the most, it's looking at the information that's going to be given to the patient, and that's the part I really like doing, because a lot of it is explaining science, and sometimes I think there's perhaps a bit too much scientific explanation and certainly too much scientific language. But also it's making sure that from the patient perspective, from my perspective, if I were to do this clinical trial that's on offer, what would it mean to me? Are there extra visits to a hospital? Are there extra blood tests or scans? And in my case, particularly blood tests, because I don't like needles. Does it mean a lot more time? If I am going to have to go to hospital more often, who's paying the extra car parking costs? Because I'm not doing that as part of my usual treatment. I'm doing that as volunteering to take part in a research job. So who's paying my costs? So it's basic questions like that. Not necessarily should the patient do it, that's up to the patient. Not even would I personally do it, but it's more, is there anything in here that would put me off that we could put right now?
The important thing about the trial management group is that it should have a full range of people to make sure that the input to that management is as broad and as balanced and as relevant as possible. And one of the viewpoints that ought to be a part of that trial management group is the viewpoint of either a patient or a carer of someone who's lived through the illness.
With the MRC Clinical Trials Unit, I'm a patient representative on the trial steering committee for one of the clinical trials, the PIVOT clinical trial. PIVOT is a really important clinical trial. It's one of the biggest that's been done recently in the UK, and if it's successful, it will have a significant impact on the way that HIV can be treated for a lot of people.
These are just a few examples of patient and public involvement at the MRC Clinical Trials Unit at UCL. If you're interested in hearing more, there are 3 other short films exploring why patients get involved in our research, what difference they can make, and the practicalities around involvement in clinical research.